Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Skylar Hughes, and you are listening to The Bird Herd. Unfortunately, Michael could not make it today. He's dealing with strep throat, and we hope he has a speedy recovery. However, today we're talking to Russ Hamer, the League of Legends Varsity coach. Russ, how are you doing today?
I'm doing better than Michael, evidently. Get well soon.
Talk to me about your job here at ISU.
So I am an assistant instructor of philosophy. I teach philosophy courses, majority of which are lower level intro courses. I just teach a wide variety. This semester I'm teaching a course on political philosophy, a course on logic, and a course in introduction to philosophy. Last semester I taught a course on philosophy of science, just wide variety of kind of introductory courses to philosophy.
How long have you been involved with Redbird Esports, and how did it start?
So I started teaching here at ISU in the fall of 2018. That semester, I kind of offhandedly mentioned video games in one of my classes, and a student came up to me afterwards, Jacob, and he asked me what I play, and I mentioned League of Legends among a few others, and he mentioned the Esports RSO, and from that, I mentioned to him that, if they needed, I've been playing LoL since basically it came out at a relatively high level. I mentioned if they needed coaches, I'd be happy to kind of coach a team or assist in any way like that. And so I started coaching within a week or two of talking to him. And so I've been coaching now for about a year and a half, and it's been great.
Talk to me about you as a League of Legends player. How what lanes do you play, and how do you know all this information that you have to teach the players?
Sure. So I main support. Support's my best. I can off roll mid okay. Like I mentioned, I've been playing the game for 10 years now. I've been in the top 5% of players for the last 5 years ish. And I followed the pro scene the whole time it's been going on, since the early days of people playing in basements to playing on giant stadiums. I've been playing for a long time. One of the things that I think is important as a support is that when you're playing support, you have to kind of keep a whole game focused the whole time. Your job is, you're never going to carry a game as a support. But instead, you're going to spend time setting up your team to win. And so I think that a lot of the same things that a successful support does ends up translating pretty well into coaching, in that the support needs to look at the map and realize we don't have vision, or the enemy's using these sorts of strategies, or we need to move over here, or we should take this objective. The support can't do any of those things. So while the rest of the team has to focus on actually doing them, the support should be spending their time thinking about what to do. So maining support, I think, made coaching a kind of natural thing, because the sorts of things that you should be doing as support are the same sorts of things that you want to bring up as a coach.
Talk to me about what you do as a coach.
Sure. So one of the interesting things is that all of us as players, and whatever games you play, I know some of y'all play CSGO, that every game that you play, when you watch a pro game, I imagine you can pick out all the mistakes they make. I'm not even any good at CSGO. I was watching a tournament the other day, Fnatic against somebody on last night, I think. And one of the players, it was down to a 1v1, and one of the players peeked around a corner when he didn't need to. The bomb was already set, the timer was going down. They could have just won if he'd stayed hidden, and he didn't. And so it's the sort of thing where, with you watch pro games, all of us can pick out all the mistakes that people make. We can notice the good plays. The difficulty is that when we're playing, we make all those mistakes. We fail to make the good plays. We do all the stupid things that if we were watching, we would know, like, that was a terrible decision. No one should have done that. So part of what I see my job as a coach being is to try and work with my players, because sure, on occasion I might point out to them mistakes that they made that they didn't realize. But by and large, they know the mistakes that they made. And the goal then is to, with my team, figure out what sorts of tools we can use, what sorts of strategies we can implement so that we play the game that we know how to play. We know what the good game looks like. We criticize pros when they make mistakes, and they're far better players than we are. So I think it's really important as a coach to recognize that the players are great. The players know what to do. It's just that sometimes when you're in the middle of the game, you forget. You get caught up in other things. So I work with my players a bunch on communication and on making sure that we're playing to our objectives and that there's certain things that we shouldn't forget, and setting up little tips and tricks to help us kind of stay on target as we play the game, because they know how to do well. It's just when you're in the heat of battle, sometimes you forget.
Tell me about picks and bans. Do you also have a say in those?
So I have a say in those. We try and do them as a democracy in some sense. So we talk about picks and bans. Before every game, we try and get together about 30 minutes before the match and talk about picks and bans, what the enemy plays. We all kind of give our thoughts. Oftentimes what I'll do is put together a kind of initial list of picks and bans, and then I'll talk through them with the team, and they'll say, like, no, we don't want to do that, but we do want to do this, and then we'll kind of all together narrow it down. So I try and do a little bit of the background work to get us started on that, but it's absolutely something that every member on the team is working with, and they are more than welcome to override me when I say, I think we should play, Nocturne Jungle. Like, we're not going to play Nocturne Jungle. Like, okay, we're going to do something else.
What is something that you've learned or something you do differently since you started coaching?
So I think early on when I was coaching, I thought that my job was telling the team what to do. And I think that was a mistake that I was making just because having coached soccer in the past, just playing other games, that's kind of the coach's job. But what I realized pretty quickly was that the players know what to do. As I mentioned, they just oftentimes struggle to communicate what they plan on doing with others. So we have a bunch of, clown fiestas because everyone has a different idea of what should be going on. So everyone's on a different page. So I focused a lot more on working on team communication and a lot less on telling my players, like, execute X or Y strategies. Because the players do those. They recognize them right away. And a lot of the times the problems that we have come down to a breakdown in communication. No one mentioned that they needed 5 more minutes before they were going to be strong enough to have the item to win the team fight. And so then we picked a team fight, and only afterwards did someone say, hey, I need another few minutes. I need 300 more golds before I can get my next item, and that's when we'll start winning fights. And so trying to really work on my team, work on communication in my team has definitely been something that I've pivoted a lot more towards since I started coaching.
Tell me about the team.
Team's great. Anyone in specific or just the team overall? What
are your guys' focuses going into the match? Top, mid, bot?
So our team, we're pretty open with our strengths. I'd say our strongest carrying potential comes out of our AD carry and our top lane. But sometimes it's mid, sometimes jungle gets crazy ahead. Obviously support is support. Jay makes good plays, but support never carries in the sense of doing damage. So we tend to try and do a kind of bot lane focus. David, our top laner, is pretty good at holding his own and building his own lead. It doesn't always happen, but he's generally pretty good at that. So we try and get bot lane ahead because Jeremiah, our AD carry, can carry pretty well. Sometimes we struggle with that and we pivot. There's been games where we've won out of mid lane, that we win out of top, or that our jungler gets super ahead. It just kind of depends. So we certainly have our plan usually being, let's get our AD carry fed, but we're pretty good at pivoting as soon as we realize, look, Josh, our mid laner's ahead, we need to play around him. Or, David up in top is the one who's carrying right now, so every fight needs to play around David.
How do you guys approach scrims? Do you guys go into it with a different mindset than matches? And what are you trying to improve on the most?
So we definitely approach scrims a little differently. We've tried some things in scrims that we would never do in a match, partially because we want practice on them. So for instance, in one of our scrims recently, we practiced losing pick ban, where We intentionally banned stuff that we knew our opponents weren't going to play. We let them all get their strongest picks just because that might happen in a match. We might accidentally screw up pick ban. We never hope that happens, but it could occur. And so we wanted some practice with what happens if we lose pick ban. And you can't really practice that in just flex queue or anything like that. We need scrims where we can set that up. So we've practiced things like that. We've practiced strategies where we've tried something in a scrim and then been like, okay, never bringing that into a game. That was a dumpster fire. So we definitely try things in scrims a little differently. What we mostly work on in scrims, outside of practicing a few specific things like that, is just trying to stay consistent in the things that we're working on. One of the big problems with a lot of games such as this is that you have, even on the pro scene, you have teams who are really feast or famine, who do really well one game and then terrible the next. And so a lot of the time in scrims, what we work on is that sort of consistency, making sure that win or lose, because we make different plays and players make mistakes, that we're not going from one game where we play incredibly to the next game where we play terribly, that we're always able to keep the same level of play and we're able to slowly improve on that. So because of that, we're oftentimes just working on the same stuff. Communication, working on making sure that we're keeping up vision, we're working on making sure that we're playing around our strengths, that we recognize our win conditions. Half the times a scrim will end and I'll say to everyone, great game, but y'all didn't call out what your win condition was. I want to hear that. Even if we're winning, even if it's obvious that we're going to crush the enemy team, I want to hear all the same stuff that I would hear if we were losing. So to work on that consistency a bunch is a lot of what we do in scrims.
In the past, we talked to middle laner Josh about some of the leagues you guys were in. Can you give us an update on some of the results?
Sure. So in GG Leagues, which is the league of just kind of Illinois universities, we have our first round of playoff game on Thursday. So we're playing in the quarterfinals against Robert Morris, their JV team. We've beaten them before. Hopefully we'll beat them again. Then if we win that, on Saturday, we'll be in person at the semifinals and finals for that. They're happening on the same day, Saturday, up in Skokie. So hopefully that goes well. We're also playing in CSL, the Collegiate Star League. I think we're 4-2 in CSL. We had a game just yesterday which we lost, which was unfortunate. Best of 3, went to game 3, and we lost the third game. But we still have a positive record, and GG Leagues, we're in the playoffs, and in C-Star, we've got a positive record. We're hoping to improve on that.
How can people watch and follow the team?
So we stream some of the games. Minimally, our AD carry almost always streams our games, but sometimes Redbird Esports as an RSO streams, and we'll get casters and whatnot, just players from other teams to kind of cast the games. Oftentimes, the leagues also might stream, so GG Leagues will be streaming so they do a vote every game day on which team gets to have their game streamed. So they've streamed us before. Sometimes they'll be streaming us. They'll minimally be streaming the semifinals and finals. Lots of ways.
Now, I definitely want to hear your take on some of the roster changes that are going on right now in the LCS.
Sure.
I just want to hear what you're excited about, your expectations, and maybe a few concerns.
Yeah, I'm super excited about Meteos joining 100 Thieves again. I think Meteos is a great player. He revolutionized jungling in North America. While he might no longer be the most skilled jungler, he is historically the best jungler North America's ever had. At a time when junglers used to be either farming or ganking, he figured out how to do both at the same time, and that changed the way we jungled. So I'm really excited to see him back. I find it curious that Sneaky he claims that he's not going, he's leaving Cloud9, but he seemed to make that decision pretty late in the game, so it's unclear if he has any other teams in mind, if he's going to try and join anywhere. So I'm really curious to see what happens there. Sneaky didn't have a great season, but he still seems to be good enough to be in the LCS. Even though he's not his former glory, he's still a good player. So we'll see what happens. I don't know if he's going to try and join another team, but as of right now, he has no home. And we'll see how that goes.
Now, what about Broxah as the jungler for Team Liquid?
Sure. Liquid just buys everyone they can. And it's worked sometimes. It also took, 4 years for it to work. So we'll see how that goes. Xmithy did really well, and we're seeing Xmithy return to Immortals, which he was successful in when he played for them before they lost their spot. So, we'll see how that team turns out again. But Broxah did great for Fnatic. He was a strong jungler. He was aggressive. He was able to accomplish quite a bit in a honestly more competitive region. EU's a stronger region than NA. So bringing him over as basically the second best jungler in Europe over to the best North American team, he should be able to succeed. And I think the real hope is that bringing in that new talent can kind of revitalize the team a bit. As we saw, Liquid struggled at Worlds. So even if Broxah and Xmithy are equally talented, which I think Broxah is probably better, but even if they were equally talented, bringing in new talent, bringing in that new mindset always brings in the possibility of a kind of revitalized team, of new strategies, of a new team mentality. And so, yeah, I'm hopeful that bringing Broxah in will then cause the team to explore new strategies and play in ways that will make them better and succeed on the world stage.
With the addition of some of the new teams into the league, what do you think the implications will be? And also Svenskeren to Evil Geniuses, do you think that's a good cornerstone for them to start with?
Yeah, Sven's a great player. He's been around for a long time, and he's demonstrated his capability for a while. I don't know how strong of a leader he is. I just legitimately do not know. So we'll see how that turns out. They might need to build, in every team you need talented players, but you also need good leaders. Bringing in veterans sometimes brings in leadership, but sometimes you just bring in good players who've been around for a while. We saw Hai from Cloud9 back in the day stick around for years when his skills weren't very good, just because he was such a good leader. He'd be the worst player on the team, but nonetheless they'd win because of him. So we'll see with building these new teams. It's always one thing to bring in a bunch of talent. It's another thing to put together a team that can function well. So with Dignitas coming in, with Immortals coming back, with Evil Geniuses hitting the scene, we'll see. We might have teams that are flush with talent, but who can't cooperate and who don't have leadership. Or we might get teams that really go well together and through having strong leaders are able to succeed. It's really going to be interesting to see how that turns out.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. Thank you, Russ, for talking with us today. If you're listening to us through YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe, or give us a follow if you're listening on SoundCloud. Make sure to catch next episode on December 4th, where we talk to Redbird Esports President Red Fox. I'm Skylar Hughes, and this has been The Bird Herd.